and welcome to Burning Issues, the only program that provides you a glimpse inside the Wichita Fire Department. I'm Fire Marshal Brad Crisp, and in this episode we'll talk with Acting Battalion Chief Stuart Bevis about fire prevention activities related to building, planning, construction, and inspection. Each year, hundreds of building projects emerge in the city of Wichita. The Wichita Fire Department, along with the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, Wichita-Sedgwick County Planning, architects, engineers, developers, and others come together to discuss building projects. Many of these projects take shape over the course of months or even years. Issues such as zoning, fire department access, fire hydrant location, sprinkler and fire alarm system requirements, and overall occupant and firefighter safety are hashed out before the project ever begins. I'd like to welcome Stuart Bevis back to the Burning Issues program. Stu, I'm glad to see you again.
Thanks for having me, boss.
How long have you been with the fire department again?
27 years.
27 years, that's almost a little over a quarter century, so it's been a while. You've been doing this for a while, had a lot of different roles in the fire department, and now you're in a different role. Why don't you tell our listening audience a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Well, I remain in Fire Prevention Division, obviously, but now instead of doing investigations, I've taken over a role of supervising the public educators and inspectors to make sure that that those areas run smoothly, but also taking care of special projects, as you mentioned, the building projects, and many other things that come across the desk.
So you still handle the accelerant detection K9 Sporty?
Yes, I still get to take care of my little girl Sporty, but then most of the other fire investigation duties are handled by the members of the FIU, and then I'm going to be dealing with all the inspection and public education. Right.
So let's talk a little bit about occupancy inspections. You have two groups of folks who go out and do various things from an inspection standpoint. You have the inspectors and you have the public educators. What's the difference in what they do?
Well, our inspectors actually do the more technical inspections, things that might require an operational permit, things dealing with hazardous materials or specifically hazardous operations. We want to make sure that we look in those things to make sure that everybody is as safe as we can be, because any of our inspections key first on life safety. We want to make sure that the employees, the customers, the public that are entering, and then eventually if an emergency does occur, first responders are as safe as possible. And that's what those inspectors are really looking at. They may look at things as simple as exit lights, fire extinguishers, exit doors being locked or blocked. Those are all real basic things that even fire crews that we have come out and do look at. But then we get into more technical things, whether there's propane in use, welding, cutting, hazardous materials. That becomes more technical. We have to use the code book and get a little bit more specific.
So then the public educators, what's the difference?
The public educators, we really look at, when they're doing inspections, they look more at the life safety things, the health care facilities, daycare facilities, assisted living, and schools. Those are really the core that they deal with, not more of the mercantile and the manufacturing. That's more the inspector's side.
Okay, so from a numbers perspective, about how many occupancies are in Wichita that would require a fire department inspection, and how many do we do a year?
There's approximately 18,000 commercial occupancies that we have to deal with, and out of that we probably get to inside of about 5,000 a year at some level, whether it be operational, where the crews actually get in and become familiar with the building, do their kind of inspection, and become familiar so that if there is a fire or an event, they know the structure. But also those other inspections, either by our inspectors or our public educators, count up to that 5,000.
So they're important inspections because of the life safety aspect, not only for the customers, not only for the folks who are in the business doing that kind of business and the customers that are coming in, but also from a firefighter safety standpoint. 2 o'clock in the morning, the building's on fire. Our folks need to know where to go, how to get there, what's going to be available, or what they're going to confront in the middle of the night when things aren't ideal and you're not walking around in the daytime looking at things.
And that's one of the biggest issues that we want to face, is that some people may realize or may say, well, I don't really need this door, I don't have that many people. but at 3 in the morning when we have a fire crew going in there because of even something as small as a trash can fire, they may become trapped, and that exit's important, and we can't have a bar locking it or blocking it. Right. Just because you don't have any customers in there doesn't mean that we have to forget about safety. Safety
right.
still exists.
Yeah, we still need to get inside. So, okay, so back to the public education piece really quick. We do a number of programs every year. You help to manage those. About how many programs per year do we do, and about how many people do we contact in those programs?
Well, they do about 1,000 programs a year, varying from small things from a daycare where they just show up and do a program, or maybe doing the puppet shows. And out of those 1,000 programs, we probably touch about 90,000 citizens.
Right.
Obviously, with culmination over Fire Prevention Week, with the fifth grade adventure at the zoo,
right.
where we have fifth graders from all over the metropolitan area, as far as Winfield and Wellington coming in, and Hutchinson. And that day alone, we touch thousands of people.
Correct.
And so those programs are very key to our getting our message. We use the media as we can, the social media, but when we're able to have actual physical contact face to face and utilize our tools, whether it be the puppet shows, the Canine Sporty, or the Mobile Prevention Experience Unit, where we can share our knowledge and our experiences with people to try to get the message across and the learning, that's one of our key missions.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the public educators aren't the only ones doing programs. Our fire crews in 22 fire stations go out and do community risk reduction events throughout the year, and that's why we have so many programs with their help. As far as one of the keystone programs that we have right now, I want to touch briefly on smoke alarm installations. How many smoke alarm installations are our folks doing a year, and what does that look like? Why is it important?
Well, obviously smoke alarms are very important to us. First, the early alert if there's an emergency to get people out and keep them safe, and we recognize not everybody's able to supply their own smoke alarms. They have issues. Sometimes it's just a physical issue of not being able to get on a ladder and install it. So that's why this need was recognized, and we were lucky to have some partners to be able to chip in, community partners to get us these. And annually we're looking at about 500 installations a year.
Those are installed by the fire department?
Correct.
Yeah.
Whether it be, for the most part, it's our inspectors and our public educators are able to get out and do that. I know some people get a little frustrated because the waiting list has gotten extensive at some point, sometimes because we're waiting on smoke alarms to come in,
right.
Other times just because we have staffing issues as well with other
priorities. Right.
Yeah, but we do get out there and get them installed, or sometimes it's just changing the battery, and other times it's just educating because they can't quite understand why the smoke alarm's going off all the time. When we find out it's right outside of the bathroom, steam is activating it, or it's right outside of the kitchen. Neither one are very ideal locations, so we try to educate them in that as well to make sure that we have them in the proper location, the proper type of detector, and so that it's useful, but it's not an annoyance, because we want it to be, when you hear that alarm, you have a problem. It's just not, oh, it's the dang toast again.
Right. So hold tight, because at the end of the program we're going to tell you how to contact the fire department if you're in need of a smoke alarm, and we'll have that information available for you. Okay, so moving now out of what the folks who work for you do, let's talk about a little bit of your responsibilities and your duties. There are a number of projects that take place over the course of a year. There's a number of even ideas that aren't projects that take place over the course of the year. To about 250 of those projects come to fruition. Let's talk a little bit about how that starts.
Well, I'm amazed since I've been in this position about all the things that are going on that you don't know about unless you're in those meetings. And it could be somebody who has an idea for a business, whether it be an event center for weddings or a tire store or whatever the case may be, that they start asking questions. And it may start as early as something that we call planning and development, where there's a table of very knowledgeable people, whether it be from the city and county planning, the metropolitan area building and construction department, zoning, the fire department, Public Works, everybody you can think of getting to the table, and the people just pitching, hey, we're thinking about using this piece of land for this.
And I want to add to that, because I think that's an important point, that we're trying to save people a lot of headache and heartburn downstream because you have an idea. There are a number of things that this community expects out of those projects, and if it's not going to be a good idea, we want to save them time, money, heartburn.
Oh, yeah, correct. I mean, some people, they go, oh my gosh, you just ruined my dream, but we're really trying to save them issues or outline what the issues might be for them later. And that's really the key, because then they know, well, wait, I'm going to have to hire an environmental specialist to look about the runoff. I'm going to have to deal with this. Is this still a viable project? But in many instances, they have some idea, but they want to have everything on the table, and they walk away with a lot of knowledge, maybe some forms to fill out, especially when we talk about planning and zoning issues, and know what they're going to have to fulfill for us. You know, really from the fire department standpoint, we look at some key things like fire department access. We have to have roads to get our big fire trucks into so we can deal with the situation. We have to have water. We have to have fire hydrants. And certain kind of businesses, we may tell them, hey, as you develop this, you may be looking at sprinkler systems, alarm systems, other safety devices.
We want folks to come away from those meetings with no surprises, and that's really a big part of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So I heard you mention subdivision. Let's talk specifically about subdivisions for just a second. That's where homes are going to be built, obviously. What are some of the things that the fire department keys in on?
Well, similar to the planning and development, but in subdivisions specifically, there's other regulations we have to look at, but then we have to look at our access points. As a fire truck enters this area, are we going to have a wide enough street? We have to have wide enough, I know it's very popular to have a median with either pretty signs or trees or whatever. Well, we have to have at least 20 feet to get our truck in there.
Because they're big and they're long.
And they're not getting any smaller.
And people park on both sides of the road sometimes, and we don't want to do damage to our equipment, let alone to their vehicles. So they need to be wide.
Yeah, we have to have a wide enough street, big enough turning radius for our trucks. And then at the streets, we have a lot of cul-de-sacs now in these developments. They have to have a turnaround big enough for our trucks, because you don't want a fire truck backing up your street. Bad things happen that way, even when we have people backing them. So we look at that turnaround sides, and then of course the standard things: how far our fire hydrants are from these dwellings. We have certain codes. You know, we have to have a fire hydrant within 500 feet of the farthest point of every house. Is what we're looking at on all new construction. And we need to meet that, because we want to, if there is an emergency, we want to be able to get water to the problem.
Right. Well, that shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. The fire department needs water to do our job, and so that's a big part of the items that we address. Not only are the hydrants important in the street width, but think about it from the perspective of the fire department. When our trucks are laying out hose, which we need to get the water from the hydrant to the fire engine to the fire, we've got to have the width for not only the hose, but to get additional fire trucks coming down the street, because there's not just one fire truck coming to that emergency.
Yeah, and you know, some people, they do have a misconception that, oh, well, you can do this, you can just carry the hose or whatever. And the problem is that our personnel are pretty strapped as it goes. And when we get them to the scene, we have a lot of specific jobs we need them to address. And we need the hose from the hydrant to the location as it lays. We're not going to be able to walk it 100 yards across somebody's yard or over a fence or something like that. And that's one of the misconceptions we have. Well, there's a hydrant on the other side of the fence. Well, I'm sorry, we can't use that.
Right. Let's go back real quick and talk about planning and development. Oftentimes we associate planning and development with large-scale projects. For example, a new Sam's or a Cabela's or something like that. Obviously, fire department access around the building, fire hydrants, and those things are always going to be important, but they may also require sprinkler systems and fire alarm systems. What are some of the things you look at?
Well, luckily with our planning review that happens in MAPCD is that they identify those in many instances at that point, and then they realize, hey, you're also going to have to supply these plans to the fire department, because part of the inspection division we have is a plans examiner that's what he looks at. Captain Showalter looks at sprinklers and alarm systems, at those requirements, what they're going to need. It's a very technical area, very specific area, and he's very skilled at that, to where he can work with these individuals, because all systems are different. SAMs, when we have tire storage, they have to have a specific kind of system in that area. And in other instances, he's going to require other specific devices. So those are things that are looked at daily.
Right. And Captain Showalter's been a guest on our programs before, so I'm sure our listening audience remember him. The thing that Captain Showalter does is he takes the project from beginning to end. He not only is in on the discussion, he looks at the plans, reviews the plans, he actually goes out on site and inspects every piece of that system, every appliance on that system to make sure it's been properly installed, properly tested, and properly put into place before the building can ever be occupied.
Yeah, he has to make sure that it is actually holding pressure, holding water, and it's going to do what it's going to do, and interact with the alarm systems as well, so when it does activate, that we know about it, that the alarm system knows about it, and we can come and help remediate any kind of situation.
Right. Speaking of remediating situations, that's a great segue into variance requests. We get a number of variance requests, as you can imagine, from folks who don't want to do what we ask them to do. And weekly, you or I, one, or sometimes both, meet with MABCD to talk about that. Why don't you describe how that happens?
Well, variance is a big word for how can we do something other than what the code asks for. And it's very understanding, because the code, the fire code, the building code, those are very big technical documents with a lot of variations and cross-references, and so sometimes that's not understood even by engineers and architects, or building concept, the owners, they want it to look like this, but the fire code or building code requires something else. So we can sit down and say, this is what they would like to have, this is what we require, and we try to find some middle ground. There are some times where, sorry, we can't find the middle ground, we have to have another door, we have to have another exit, but maybe we can find a way to make that more palatable where, okay, it's not a public exit, but it's going to sound an alarm if you activate it, so it still can be used in an emergency. There's other times where maybe in lieu of requiring them to move something in a certain area, if they put sprinklers, that might make it safe enough to where we can allow that a little bit longer distance of travel. And many of these instances or variances are actually covered in the code. They give us a lot of leeway to make those judgments, but in other instances we have to use our best judgment as professionals, and we interact with those other professionals, the project developers, the architects and engineers, to find the middle ground to where we have the minimal risk to the life safety and the property loss, but it's understood to where we can have a project still go forward and not kill it just because of a code issue.
Right. Yeah, it's important to understand that there are code books and they're very technical and they can be black and white, but we have a job to interpret and try to find what the intent of the code really means and to try to help folks achieve the goals that they've set out to meet.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of boring and technical stuff, but when it comes down to it, it's very interesting because you get to see these projects and what the problems are on all sides of it, and then try to work those projects out, because when it really comes down to it, what we have to keep grounded in is not only what the public's going to interact with, but what the crews are going to interact at 3 in the morning, as we always say, in a smoke-filled environment, to make sure that that everything's going to be as safe as we can have it without being overly cautious.
So if we're not able to come to a compromise with MABCD and the architects or the project folks, the last thing that we deal with is the Board of Code Standards and Appeals. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the board? Well,
whenever there are some issues, developers, citizens, or whatever can take things to the board. The board can review issues, whether it's a abatement issue with a house that's maybe a problem, maybe it's an eyesore or whatever the case may be, or where we're making a code decision and a developer has a concern with that maybe it's not being interpreted, or maybe the code needs to be altered because it's not right for our community. And we do come into those things. That's why we have amendments to the code.
Right.
And maybe it's a time to present these, hey, maybe these could be a good amendment. So bringing it to the Board of Code Standards and Appeals is a way to say, hey, I understand what the fire department's saying or the MABCD, but we want to do it this way. And those members of the board, who are all pretty experienced professionals in different areas of of building and construction and development can look at it and say, does this make sense? Is there something wrong here that needs to be fixed? Because as specific as we can get with code development, we can miss things.
Right.
We try not to, and also there's just things change that we would never experience sort of away from this, but doing with burn permits. When we started this incinerator, a big air curtain that you can burn stuff in half the time.
Never even heard of them before.
No.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't in the code when we adopted it 5-6 years ago. So it's something we have to look at. And the board can look at some things and maybe then redirect it to see if maybe we need to think again.
Right. Let's wrap up with one of the other final projects that you do that take a significant amount of your time, and that's special projects,
Yes.
things like reviewing fireworks requests. And we're not talking about the kind that you shoot in your front yard. We're talking about the commercial stuff done by professionals. Tell us a little bit about special projects.
Well, the one thing that I didn't realize as much until I was in this position is all the special events that happen inside and around the city of Wichita, whether it be a 5K run or Riverfest.
Right.
That there's always things going on, and there's a process people go through. And the city, all different departments are involved in that. And when it comes to the fire department, we have to look at the aspects, whether there's tents involved that we have to inspect, street closures that are going to affect our emergency responses, and of course the fireworks shows, to where we need to interact with the shooters, the operators, the people who are distributing the fireworks. And we're talking about 6-inch shells, not the 1.5-inch shells.
Right.
They're still illegal in the city. But,
Right.
But those things, we have to review the plans, go meet with them. This weekend I'm going to be going to Trust Bank Arena to look at a pyrotechnic show for a concert,
Right.
to make sure that things are as safe as can be, and that we have safety measures in place. So that is something that's happening every week. There's something going on that we have to make sure that crews are aware of, and that we're prepared for.
Right. Well, Stu, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in. I know we tried to cram a lot into a short period of time, and you do a lot of great work, and this community is better for it. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
The Wichita Fire Department has smoke alarms and batteries to give away to those who cannot afford them or are in need. We want to give special thanks to our community partnerships out there, All Pack Batteries, Safe Kids, Schofield Automobile Dealerships, and our newest partners, Shelter Insurance, Tyco Simplex Grinnell, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and now the Davis family. If you would like to become more involved in the city of Wichita, or if you want to learn more about the Wichita Fire Department, you can go to wichita.gov and click on the Fire Department link. Check us out on Facebook or call the Fire Department at 268-4441. That concludes this episode of Burning Issues. Our mission is to provide our community excellent, proactive fire and life safety services through prevention, education, and protection. Remember, Wichita firefighters are highly trained professionals who are your friends and neighbors. They are Wichita's bravest, and they are somewhere serving you in many ways every day.